You're listening to Men of Abundance, episode 90, with Nick Loper.
Welcome to Men of Abundance, the podcast for those looking to level up their lives by hanging out with some of the greatest leaders and established professionals in our community, living a life of integrity, honor, and the abundance mentality. Prepare to pay it forward with your host, former Army medic turned lifestyle entrepreneur, Wally Carmichael.
What's up, Men of Abundance? Today we are talking with Nick Loper, and I have to apologize to you and apologize to Nick because he and I had this conversation back in January. And I have been in my mind wondering, when in the world is this episode with Nick going to pop up? Even though I'm the one doing the editing and I'm the one doing everything and putting all the show together, somehow Nick fell off of my roster of guests that I have talked to. And I keep them all in this database, and I have it selected. I have it marked by color code to let me know that the interview has been scheduled, and then that the interview has been conducted, and then if the interview has been edited and posted and all of that good stuff. Somehow, some way, I ended up not putting Nick on that roster, and I completely skipped over him. So that's why you're getting 3 episodes this week, 2 interviews, and 1 5-minute Aloha Friday. And as usual, just like just about anything else in my life, it all works out perfectly because on Tuesday, I shared a conversation with you between myself and Shane Sams, who is just half of the amazing duo over at Flipped Lifestyle, where we talked about important topics like being an indentured slave, being too secure in what's not a secure vocation in many cases. How much does money actually play a role in your living a life of abundance? And we talked about the importance of a side hustle and the importance of starting something on the side, some sort of side gig. So now today we're having a conversation with Nick Loper, who is the chief side hustler at Side Hustle Nation. How awesome is that? Now, before I introduce you to Nick, as usual, I want to afford you the opportunity or to remind you just one simple way that you can be abundant in your life today, and that is to simply share this podcast, share this episode, share the link, Men of Abundance, with everybody that you know. Share it on your social media, share it in an email, text it out to somebody. Right here from the app that you're listening to, if you're listening to this show on the iPhone app, or if you're listening to it on any other podcast player, there is a share button, and you can share the episode. Click on the 3 little dots, a drop-down menu will come down, and you can share it however you want to share it. The other thing is very, very simple. It's very easy and very quick to do, is to leave us a rating and review in iTunes or on whatever podcast player you're listening to. And again, you can do that directly from your app, or you can go to menofabundance.com right on your computer or on your phone and click underneath the podcast player where it says leave a review. That will take you directly to iTunes, and you can leave a rating and review, put 4, 5, 3 stars, whatever it is that you want to do. And I really want your honest opinion. I want your honest feedback, because I do read every single one of those reviews. And by you leaving a review, it pushes us up higher in the search engines so that more people around the world can find Men of Abundance. Right now, last count was 42 or 43 different countries that this show is being downloaded in, and that just blows my mind. But we want more. We want more because we know more men out there are looking for this information. So be abundant in your day today and help us out with that. So as I already mentioned, today we are talking with Nick Loper, and Nick is an author and online entrepreneur featured in the New York Times, Forbes, Fortune, and a TEDx speaker. This is one of the first ways that I was introduced to Nick, and I will have that TEDx talk linked up in the show notes. In fact, I'll have the video that you can watch in the show notes at menofabundance.com/090. Now, as I already mentioned, Nick is the chief side hustler at Side Hustle Nation, where they are growing a community of aspiring and part-time entrepreneurs, where he also hosts the top-rated Side Hustle Show podcast. Excellent podcast. I highly recommend it, especially if you're looking for some sort of side hustle. Now, you can find out much more about Nick and Side Hustle Nation at sidehustlenation.com. But as I mentioned in episode 089, I caution you when you go to the site because there truly is a plethora of information. There are so many side hustles that you can get started with that you are going to get lost, and what ends up happening is many people do not take action. Nick and I talk about a few things today that will help you combat that and take action instead of getting stuck in all of the information. But in addition to that, I'm going to make this the topic of discussion in our 5-Minute Aloha Friday. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it right after this conversation in this episode, but also make sure that you subscribe and tune in to our 5-Minute Aloha Friday this Friday, which is going to be episode 091, and I'm going to help you move forward and take action. Now, without further ado, Men of Abundance, it is my honor to introduce you to the Chief Side Hustler, Mr. Nick Loper. Nick, welcome to Men of Abundance. How you doing?
Doing great, Wally. How are you?
I am amazing. Where are you at in the world?
About 45 minutes east of San Francisco, out here in the Bay Area suburbs.
I have been to San Francisco, but it was many, many years ago. I was a young man. My grandmother lived in Sacramento, and we drove from Phoenix to Sacramento to spend some time with her. And while we were there, we drove down. And at the time, you could still drive down the, the red brick road that they had there? I don't know if you can still do that.
Oh, on Lombard Street?
I guess. That was so long ago, I don't remember. But I remember going down that road. It's really steep, and it's windy. And it's just these red bricks that you go down. And from what I understand, they had closed that off to tourists. I guess you can't go through there anymore.
Yeah, we still see cars driving down there every now and again. So I think maybe they reopened it.
I must have got some bad information or they reopened it. But I did. I like San Francisco. It was so cool. There, as a young man anyway, there was so much going on. It was so much hustle and bustle. And coming from Phoenix, I had never really been to a big city like that.
And now you're just hanging out on the beach.
Now I'm hanging out on the beach out here in Hawaii, absolutely. So, I like to start the show out, Nick, pretty much the way I start out just about every morning, and that is with an attitude of gratitude. What do you have to be grateful for today?
I'm grateful to kind of have control over my own calendar and, get to work on projects that I think are fun and exciting and challenging, and that's kind of what keeps me going every day.
Yeah, and you have a lot going on. I've been to your website quite a few times. I listened to your podcast, Side Hustle, and I'm just amazed at all of the content and all the information that you put out. And, being in the space, being a podcaster for the last almost 5 months now, and I started out with a 3-day-a-week show, and now I'm down to a 1-day-a-week show, as it was suggested to me by many other podcasters and mentors. And even 1-day-a-week show is a lot of content when I'm doing my podcast and my blog and social media and everything. I see everything you have going on, and it just totally blows my mind.
Well, I only try and do one show a week, and it is a challenge. There's, even though the final product may only be half an hour of audio, there's, 4 or 5 hours that goes into that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. So before we get started here on the show, I talked a little bit about you and, what we're talking about here today, but I really want to hear it from you. And here on Men of Abundance, we like to get to know the man behind the abundance. And, there's so many shows out there that talk business and entrepreneurship. And I don't want to take away from any of those guys. So I really just want to get to know who is Nick and, what kind of drives you to get to this point.
I don't know. I think at the heart of it is, a guy who has tried a lot of different things, and most of those have flopped, but thankfully a few of them have worked. My foray into the entrepreneurial world was, even before this, I was the kid, trying to sell baseball cards at the end of the sidewalk and sell candy at summer camp stuff. So maybe the seed had been planted earlier, but kind of as a quote adult, where it really got started, where it really got bit by the entrepreneurial bug was when I took this house painting internship in college. They called it an internship. Really what they did was kind of assign you a zip code, assign you a territory, and say, all right, it's your job to go out and paint as many houses as you can over the course of the summer. And of course, they give you training on how to actually estimate a job and how to hire people and how to get this done. But then you're kind of on your own. And I remember this moment when This is in kind of like a rainy Seattle March evening. I drive out to my territory, and I've driven around a couple different subdivisions, and it's like just cold and dark and gross. And I'm sitting in my truck and trying to psych myself out because I'm ultimately realizing, look, nothing is going to happen until you go knock on that first door. Cold calling was how we were expected to get business, and it was just really, really intimidating. But it was kind of like that moment of realization, like, you are 100% in control right now. And so I finally got up the nerve to go, knock on that first door, and I think thankfully nobody was home. So I was like, okay, that wasn't so bad. And you go on to the next and the next, and it, eventually you get leads and you get jobs, and it was just, kind of that first moment of like, well, you really got to be the captain of your own ship. And I think that was really important for me to see at an early age. It's never been more true in this economy.
That is very true. But at a very early age, I was doing stuff like that. I remember one of the earliest times, I did that little candy thing where, this is really creepy, actually. I had this conversation recently. I was a young man, and this guy, I don't know how I get started with it, but this guy in a white van, would basically pick all of us kids up. He would take us out to a neighborhood, not in our neighborhood, because wasn't nobody buying candy and stuff in our neighborhood, but take us to some little bit wealthier neighborhood, drop us off on a corner and say, meet me back here in an hour. And we would all, you go that way, you go that way, you go that way. And we would all meet back there, and we'd go door to door selling candy. And then we get back into a creepy white van. I think about it now, and there's no way in the world I would allow my kids to do something like that.
Yeah,
but
this sounds super shady.
Super shady, right? And we did get commission. We got paid off of it for those of us who didn't eat our product, quite frankly. But then the other thing was I actually lived in a trailer park, and the park manager told everybody that they had to trim their trees, and they were going to charge a flat fee for a guy to come around and trim the trees, that each individual lot owner, that lived there, tenant had to pay it. When I found that out, I was like, well, shoot, I'll just go charge $5 less. And I went door to door with my stepdad's electric chainsaw plugged into their electricity and trimmed these people's trees. Had no idea what I was doing, but I did, I saw the first couple trees that were done. I can do that. And then, went door to door doing that. So, I think I kind of got introduced to that cold call early on and kind of got over that fear real early.
I love it. I love the chainsaw story.
I just thought of it when you were talking about painting houses. It just popped into my head. I forgot about that for so many years. Amazing. So, how did you get up to the point to where you're now, got the podcast going, got so much information about the side hustle, and, get all that going?
Well, it's a process. So you're looking at really now 15 plus years of entrepreneurial trial and error. And I think anything is kind of in evolution, and picking what's next doesn't mean picking what's forever. So the stuff that I'm doing today would look completely foreign to, the Nick of even just 5 years ago. So it's kind of been in constant motion. But so I had the painting business, which was really under, another company's kind of umbrella. After school, or even, while I was still in school, began kind of an online business in the world of affiliate marketing. And so that was really the first kind of online side hustle, my first official side hustle when I was working my corporate job. That was a footwear comparison shopping site. So it would aggregate the catalogs from Zappos and Amazon and all these other online stores and tell you where to find the best price on your next pair of shoes. Hardly a world-changing business idea, but it was effective for many years. And that was the vehicle that let me quit my job. During the time that I was running that full time, I, kind of learned the lesson the hard way, to diversify your income streams, diversify your traffic sources and stuff like that. And so, was always kind of on the hunt for the next business idea and all these different side projects. Most of those flopped, but a couple are still around today. And one of those is the Side Hustle Nation blog and the Side Hustle Show podcast, which I started in spring of 2013.
So all of the side hustles that you have listed on there, on the blog, where did you come up with all of that? Is that stuff that you particularly had experience with, or subscribers or other listeners?
Well, I've tried a lot of different things, but no, I haven't tried every single thing listed on the site. And that's kind of the beauty of it is, being able, like doing the podcast, for example, being able to interview people who've, tried stuff I've never even thought of before. And I know it's a great call when I hang up being like, man, I could totally do that. And there are, several ideas I've gotten from my guests and implemented either in my own business or tried to do. One example that comes to mind is I met a guy whose claim to fame was he earned enough money on Fiverr to buy a house in his first year on the platform. And so Fiverr, if you're not familiar, is the marketplace of goods and services where everything starts at $5. And I was like, well, what could you possibly sell for $5 that would earn you this kind of money? And he's like, the keyword is starts at. It's all about the upsell. And so he went on to explain that your $5 thing has got to be some created asset that you have, a PDF file, a audio file, video file. And if somebody wants your direct time, they can pay for that in the extras. And so I thought that was an interesting way to get started in the freelancing world. So I've played around with Fiverr and selling some digital assets I've created, and even doing some freelance website audits and stuff. Tons of fun.
Yeah, and quite frankly, that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on that. And I saw your TED Talk. You did a TED Talk on entrepreneurial generation, which I thought was brilliant. And I've done many, many side hustles, even while on active duty, even while deployed in Bolivia and Iraq. I had side hustles going on there, always something going on. And I tell my audience, I tell abundant leaders all the time, even if you're secure in your job, you love what you're doing, you or your significant other, your wife, girlfriend, husband, because I do have women listening to the, Men of Abundance, you have to have some sort of a side hustle. It's a requirement in today's day and age. And that's part of what you talk about in your TED Talk. Can you talk on that a little bit?
Sure. I think part of it is, the positive, proactive side of saying, look, I just want to use my free time more productively, which is kind of the attitude that I took. And, maybe, hopefully someday this could become a full-time thing. Like if I don't see myself, climbing the corporate ladder and making a 30-year career out of being an employee. And that's kind of the side that I really like to focus on. The other side that, gets more attention in the news is the kind of reactive, more pessimistic side. Like I need to earn more money given the job market, given the rising cost of living and how wages aren't kind of following that same trajectory. So there's two sides of it, but the proactive side is a little more fun to talk about. Say, hey, look, you can control what you can control, be in charge of your own destiny, and at least take some proactive steps for the inevitable job market crash or stock crash that may be coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on. And then I'll add to that, in my personal point of view, is that when or if something does happen at work, either you get injured, something completely out of your control, you get injured, you decide, or something that is in your control, you just decide you don't want to put up with the, whatever's going on at work or something like that, or the job goes under, the company is purchased, or just completely goes under, you get laid off, whatever the case may be, you have something to fall back on. And then a lot of people don't realize this part, but I took a course in home business or small business and home business tax laws, and Congress actually has over 100 tax codes for the home business owner, and there's reason for that. Because they would rather you put more effort into your home business, into your side hustle, than the alternative is to go downtown to the unemployment office and draw unemployment. They would rather you do that because, one, you're sustaining yourself. Two, you may be hiring additional people and getting other people off of back into the job force. And there's so many other reasons for that. So there are tax reasons for it, and you need to look into that. And not all tax advisors know this stuff very well because it's not taught. But there's those other reasons that I see as well.
Absolutely. The tax code is very much written by business owners for business owners. So that sounds like a very uncharacteristically smart thing for Congress to do.
Yeah, in fact, I had heard this from the guy who was teaching the class. In fact, he said that and I don't want to get into the whole tax thing, although we are now in that time frame, and it certainly helps me out a lot, and it has for many years since I've always had a side hustle on tax deductions. But the group of taxpayers that have the most deductions are home business owners because of, there's, like I said, the tax codes. Most people, I think I used maybe up to 9 of the benefits of having a home-based business that are, there's so many more out there. But yeah, it's just a great thing to do. And there's so many things you can do. What is one of the craziest side hustles that you've seen? Because I'm so amazed. I'm always I just ask a lot of questions, especially when I find somebody who is making money and especially making a living doing something I never even considered, never even thought was possible.
Oh my gosh, there's so many stories from the archives. So the Fiverr guy is a great example of that.
Yeah.
I met a gal in San Francisco who hosts urban hikes, and she started, just taking people on these 3-hour tours around San Francisco. She kind of learned the history of the different neighborhoods. I really liked that one because it's like, hey, this is something that anybody could do. I met another guy who called himself the flea market flipper, taking advantage of the age-old business model of buy low, sell high. He's in Orlando, and so you can find him every weekend at the Orlando flea market looking for, in his words, the odd items. So he gave a couple examples of stuff that he found and found kind of a disconnect between what it was selling for locally and what he thought he might be able to get for it online or on his own. One of them was a prosthetic leg he found for $30 or $40, turned around and sold it on eBay for like $1,000. Another one was like a exercise bike that's used in physical therapy offices. So it was like $200 or $300 he picked it up for and turned around and flipped it for a couple grand. And just like crazy stuff, like something that anybody can do, especially if you have kind of an eye for what as you practice more, you can get more of an eye for it. Similarly, I met a guy who makes a full-time living buying and selling stuff on Craigslist. I think he just moved to Hilo. So he's not too far from me anymore. Who else kind of stands out? Oh, one of my favorite ones was this vending machine business. So this guy in Houston,
Matt Miller.
Matt Miller.
Yeah,
so
he's been on the show.
You had him on the show?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely. Great guy. I love that story. Go on and tell that story. I don't know if everybody's heard that one.
Yeah, so Matt is having some financial trouble in his corporate job. He's kind of taken to side hustling, like flipping books, but has found it really like labor intensive. So he's like, I got to figure out how to make this a little bit more passive. And so he goes across town. He finds this vending machine, this gumball machine listed on eBay for $36. The seller happens to be local. So he takes his kids, drives across town, picks this thing up. And then this is like the hustle part of it, like goes door to door in the strip mall until he finds a karate studio that says, yeah, you can park that machine in our corner. That's fine. A couple weeks later, comes back, opens the machine up, quarters, he says, are falling all over the floor. And it's this light bulb moment of, this passive income. So he parlays that into the next machine. And now he's got 2,000 machines or something like it. And he's, built this whole business on the back of it. And so I really admire that story.
Yeah, and he took that on further. He's a Air Force veteran. He was an Air Force pilot, in fact.
Yes.
And he took it even further, Abundant Leaders. And what he did was he started his own business called Spirit Vending. And he's got these vending machines that he puts in schools. And here's the abundant part about it, right? So he puts these sticker machines in schools, and the stickers are specific for that school, so that they have the logos, all that stuff for the school specific. And then a portion of the profits go back into the school as a fundraiser. And then he's franchised out. Now he's a franchisor, and he's got franchisees all over the place. And he's got somebody out here. Last I talked to him, he's working on getting somebody out here in Hawaii. And now he's just having a blast doing that. And I just think it's amazing. So you look at something as simple as gumball machine. Starts with one gumball machine. that he bought from a guy, and now it turns into this whole other thing. And you look at somebody else, like, people don't think about this and they don't know this if they don't follow. I tell people all the time, and I've just recently recorded something I'm writing a blog on, stop following Gary Vaynerchuk today. And what I mean by that is don't stop following Gary, but stop following him who he is today. Look at him back when he was in school and selling stuff on eBay, going out to yard sales and buying, little trinkets, just like the first guy he was talking about, with the swap meets and stuff. And he was buying stuff and selling stuff on eBay as a kid. And then he started doing stuff for his dad's wine business on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And then he started doing other stuff. And then now he's got Vayner Media, which is, multi-million dollars over and over, and just moved into London, right? So one little thing like that, if you want it to, can move into something so much bigger. And it's just going to perpetuate you so much further, because you're going to start experiencing different things, getting connected with other people, and learning other things, and finding out who you are and what you were meant for. And I love it. Thanks for sharing all those stories.
You bet. It's that evolution we're talking about. And actually, this was a tidbit that Ryan Finley shared, the Craigslist reseller. He says the best opportunities aren't visible until they're already in motion. And at the time, I like that's kind of a hippie thing to say. But looking back, it's 100% true, because it's the conversations that you have that might spark a new idea. It's like while you're researching one project, you might stumble upon something else, and that, spins off something entirely different. And I can attest to that 100%. So it almost doesn't matter what you start. It's just like that act of staying started and keeping in motion.
Absolutely. Yeah, very well said. I love that. We're at the point now, actually, where we're going to pay it forward to our abundant leaders. You ready to do that?
All right, I'll do my best.
I know you will. Hey, man, here at Men of Abundance, I'm really big on living your life of abundance in family, faith, finances, and fitness. And we have all of these discussions. But one of the things that we've been talking about lately is improving and increasing your finances. And there are so many reasons for that I'm not going to get into today. But we're always talking about why it's important and a few ideas about how you can do that. But I've never really shared the nuts and bolts about exactly what to do and how to do it. So today, right now, I'm going to share with you one of the resources that I personally use that keeps me on track and up to date with all the latest trends and everything about my personal business. And if you have a business and are struggling at this point or thinking about starting a business, this is a resource that you absolutely must get your hands on. I am talking about a membership site called Freedom. It's spelled Freedym. This is the Netflix for entrepreneurs, because I can't even tell you how many videos are in here for you to learn from. Everything to have to do with entrepreneurship, motivation, personal growth, marketing, money, lifestyle, membership sites, you name it. Everything you need to get started is right here. And since I'm a member, you can get started for just $1. The way to do that and to get to that link is to go to menofabundance.com, click on the resources tab at the top of the page, and scroll down, and you will see the Freedom logo, Freedym. Click on that, take a look, see everything that they have, and get started for just $1 and get inside. You're going to be blown away at how much information is in there. I'm loving it. I'm using it, and it is greatly assisting me in building my side hustle and building my membership site. So right after this conversation, go to the resources tab at menofabundance.com and go check it out. All right, let's get back to the conversation. So give Men of Abundance 1 to 3 actionable steps that they can take today.
Well, one thing that I'm working on, so it's around, we're recording this around the first of the year, and, so I've kind of witnessed a lot of friends and colleagues posting their New Year's resolutions or their big picture goals for the year. And for whatever reason this year, I'm having a hard time with that. It's easy to pick a number out of the sky. I want to make $1 million. I want to have a New York Times bestseller, whatever that is. Those goals are great and they can be really motivating if you can find a way to kind of reverse engineer a path to get there. But I read a post recently that said, I'm giving up my goals and focusing on habits instead. And I'm probably butchering the title of that. But that really kind of, it almost gave me permission in a way to be like, look, you don't need to have some, flight, sky high, resolution or goal for the year. Instead, why don't you just focus on some daily habits and try and make these incremental improvements? So to get back to your point about, 1 to 3 actionable items, I'm going to share a couple of these micro habits that are on my list for at least this month, and they may change over time. So one thing that I continue to struggle with is email. I have this, decade-long habit of, firing up the computer first thing in the morning, opening up Gmail, and saying, what surprises do you have for me overnight, internet gods? And it's just immediately starting my day in reactive mode, which is not, even have I hammered home on like productivity tips, 100 times, like that's just not smart. It's really a hard habit to break. So my micro habit for this year, one of them is to do one proactive task before diving into my inbox. And I've kind of itemized out my top 3 priorities the night before. So I immediately know what priority number 1 is going to be. And even if it's just 5 minutes, even if it's, just a one thing, doing that first before diving in to the inbox has been really helpful for me. I know we're only, a few days into the year, but I'm feeling good about that one. And then the other one, or one of the other ones, kind of in the area of health, is to do one push-up a day. You're a former, Army guy, so you're probably like one push-up, but it's the act of getting down on the floor. You're probably going to do more than one once you're there. And it's almost too small to fail in a way. It's like, if you're, and I'm visually tracking this, I'm looking at my, calendar thing with little X's in it, right above my computer right now. And, the act of doing either one of those things isn't, likely to change your life in and of itself. But for me, and I think where the magic is in the mental hack of kind of convincing yourself, like, I'm the person who, takes action, says this was something important to me, committed to doing it, and I did it. And that's where I'm curious to see where this goes. Like, this is a new experiment for me this year, but trying to figure out where these micro habits kind of trigger in my brain the more proactive nature, and trying to really take control one tiny little habit at a time.
Yeah, and I like that you pointed out that you don't know where it's going to go because, and you're just experimenting with it. I think it's important to do that, to take a different route and change things up a little bit, and starting with that one push-up, knowing that chances are you get down there, do one push-up, you're probably going to do a couple more.
Right. I did an experiment a while ago where I called it push-ups to failure, and it was just every day. It was a pretty simple rule: do as many as you can before your arms give out, and each day, write it down, and then each day just trying to beat that by one. And it actually was a really effective experiment because it was like just you knew the target that you're shooting for, and it was like, I can beat that. And it's just like slow and steady growth over the course of that month. And I think that kind of 1% improvement mentality is something that can compound over time. And I think I've seen that with the podcast. Look, I'm trying to be a better host week in and week out, trying to be a better writer, through this practice week in and week out. Can I get 1% better today? I think that can apply to a lot of different areas, not just fitness.
Well, that's a good point that you brought up right there. And I'd like to explore that just a little bit and kind of break norm here. And that is, as you've been doing your podcast and as you've been writing more, how has that changed you, not just your skills and being a better host and being a better writer? How has that changed you on a personal level or improved you?
I guess with the podcast, what I'm trying to do is kind of create a story arc or a narrative. Like, what do I want the listener to get out of this, and how can I kind of lead the conversation to that outcome? It comes from listening to some other shows and just, with 45-minute preambles before they get into like one actionable tip, just like getting frustrated with that and trying to create the show that I would want to listen to. But beyond that, the show has been just an unbelievable connector. John Corcoran, I don't know if he's been on your show, but he constantly says, I would do the podcast. He hosts the Smart Business Revolution podcast, I think it's called. And he's like, I would do the show even if nobody listened because of the value of these connections. Like, it gives you this this platform, this opportunity to reach out to people you otherwise would have no excuse to call up out of the blue and talk to for half an hour. And that's been, a really powerful thing. Like, a couple years ago, the scale tipped where, my my number of internet friends, started to outpace by a long shot by now, like my number of real life friends. And it's all as a result of kind of putting myself out there in the blog and in the podcast. And, just kind of snowballs. The network kind of spiders out from there. Like, okay, well, who else do you know? And it's been really fun.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. And that's why I asked that question, because since I've been podcasting, it's only been about 5 months. The connections that I'm making with the conversations that I'm having, every single conversation that I have just helps me grow as a person, helps me grow as a man. And then I just get more and more connections to more people. And you know what? I never thought about that. But the fact of the matter is, I do have many close connections with people that I've never met face to face, and I mean very close connections. We've had some pretty strong conversations, and holding each other accountable. People I've never met face to face, and we're here, talking like we've known each other for years. We'll get on Skype calls together, and it's all because of this podcast and the people that I've been able to have amazing conversations with. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Well, on top of that, you're building a really strong connection with listeners. Somebody who's spending 30, 40 minutes with you in their earbuds week after week, that's a much deeper relationship than somebody who spends, 5 minutes or 3 minutes like skimming your blog post. And, I've, met people in person. I actually had somebody recognize me locally at the hardware store. They're like, "Are you Nick?" And I was like, kind of creeped me out, but it was, it's weird. And, it's a really cool medium in that sense.
It is, and the other thing is since I listen to your show quite often, I feel like I already know you. Not every guest that I get on the show is somebody I listen to, or even somebody that has a podcast. Some of them do not. Many of them do not have podcasts. In fact, most of them don't. But I've either read something that they were doing, and I know a little bit about them. But for those of you like yourself and Chris Ducker and a few others that I listen to their podcasts on a regular basis, I actually feel like I've known you for quite some time, because especially like you're so real, and the way you write, the way you speak, from what I've seen on your content that you've put out there. So it's neat to be able to get on the line and talk to somebody you feel like you already know. And I've been doing YouTube videos for quite some time, and what you're saying, you were recognized. I was in Korea in a Starbucks, and this guy that was in front of me turned around and saw me. He's like, because I'm an insanity instructor, and I used to do I did a video a long time ago on the best shoe to wear during insanity. And,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and he said, and it's got a lot of views. I haven't even looked at it in a while, but it's got a lot of views. But he turned around and said, "I'm here. I came to this base today to go to the post exchange to buy that pair of shoes because of the video that you did." And I was like, "Dude,
Whoa.
Are you freaking kidding me right now?" Yeah, and the guys that were with me were like, "Dude, who are you?" Because they didn't know. They didn't know I did this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty. It's
cool.
a neat feeling. And it is kind of cool. So, anyhow, you already mentioned a few habits and things that you do. Are there any other daily habits that you do that make the biggest impact in your life?
Probably the biggest, not daily, but weekly habit has been putting out the show. So it's 200 episodes deep for the last 3.5 years. I think there's a compound effect of, having this body of work where, if somebody wants to go back and binge on the archives, they absolutely can. And I will ask for their understanding, the first few episodes, first probably 50 episodes, kind of before I, really hit my stride. But there's that element of it, and just kind of that consistent practice where, it becomes, part of people's routine. And I'm probably a 5-year listener of the Tropical MBA podcast. I know it's coming out every Thursday, and it's just, kind of a part of my, what are these guys talking about this week, And I think hopefully it's becoming the same for listeners of the Side Hustle Show.
Yeah, I'm a Side Hustle Show listener. What is that one you mentioned, the Tropical MBA?
Yeah, Tropical MBA podcast, formerly the Lifestyle Business podcast. and then recently this year, they've kind of really stepped up their game in terms of production quality, which has been, of course, inspired me to do better on that front as well. So I think those guys do a nice job.
Yeah, I'll go check that out because I'm always looking for something. I don't know that I need any more podcasts to listen to, but I'm always looking to study what other people are doing just to kind of get an idea of, how other guys are doing, how other shows are doing, and, what they're doing different.
Yeah. Now, what other shows do you like? I want to interrupt. Also, I'll side rail this thing for a minute.
No, that's fine. For me, the ones I listen to on a regular basis, I got to talk back in the mic, are Panora. I listen to Pat Flynn. See, Pat and Chris Ducker are really close friends. They used to have a podcast that they haven't done in a while. The One Day Business Breakthrough was absolutely one of my favorite podcasts because it's Pat and Chris having a conversation, breaking down somebody else's business, usually an online business because they can look at the website and stuff like that, but brick and mortar businesses as well. I listen to, since I'm a veteran, I listen to Veteran Resource Podcast and amazing podcast. So much information for veterans. So Smart Passive Income by Pat Flynn, Ask Pat, Slow Hustle. Once in a while I listen to that one. And Success 101 is a good one. I listen to Lewis Howes, the School of Greatness.
Okay.
And another one that I really like quite a bit that I get a lot of information from for my show actually is Knowledge for Men. And then, of course, the Side Hustle. Those are the top ones I listen to. And so what book would you recommend to our abundant leaders and why?
Books. Gosh, my reading has really taken a dive since having a baby early last year. One that I really like, kind of solidified a mindset shift for me, was The Go-Giver by Bob Burg, where he talks about really leading with value, trying to be as helpful as you can. The businesses that I've had succeed all have that in common, and the businesses that I've had fail all kind of led with money first. Or I thought this was a unique profit opportunity to go after versus what's really the unique value that I could bring to this. Like I started one of the projects that flopped spectacularly was like this wine, not even spectacularly, like it just died a quiet death to the corner of the internet. It was like a wine related site because we kind of live near wine country. And it's like, well, I don't know anything about wine. Like, I don't care about it. Like, it was completely like, Me Too content. Like, there's no unique reason for anybody to visit this. It was like just a desperate plea for somebody to come and click on my affiliate links. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I had no, real drive to keep it going. And it was just, but going back to the point about, the best opportunities aren't visible until you're already in motion. It was during the research for that site that I kind of stumbled upon somebody who was doing really well in that wine space. I was like, how can I pivot on this guy's idea to a different vertical? And it turned into a really good project.
Yeah, that's a very good point that you brought up there. If you're not passionate about it, it's going to come out and it's probably going to end up dying. And that is a good book. I haven't read the entire book, but I've read parts of it. I do need to get back into it because it is really the premise of what we talk about here at Men of Abundance, or one of many anyway. So, and we'll have that listed in the show notes at menofabundance.com. So, based on the side hustle, do you know, I want to ask you this question, and that is, has anybody ever come to you? What has stopped people from starting a side hustle, even if they know what their side hustle is, what they're good at, what they would like to do? What do you find that is stopping people from doing that?
The big three that I hear are time, money, and ideas. So in this case, it sounds like the person already has an idea, which is, probably the biggest hurdle to get over of, what my business is even going to be. So if you already have that, you're down to kind of time and money. And the time equation really is a big challenge because, our time is limited. We only have 24 hours in a day, but at the same time, it's uniquely egalitarian in that everyone only has 24 hours in the day. So one thing that I would probably recommend if you're in that position of like, I seriously do not have any spare minutes, track your time. Every minute, there's probably an app that'll do this. I've used one called Toggle in the past, which at least does it for you while you're, at your computer, TOGGL. They probably have a smartphone app to do it as well. But even just like in an Excel spreadsheet, I'm starting this task, start time, stop time, any notes you want to write about that. And what I found is there's a lot of like slush time in there, where it's like I'm waiting for this meeting to start, or I'm commuting, and how could I used to drive 500, 700 miles a week for my day job before I like ever discovered podcasts or audiobooks. It's like I just would kill to have all of that wasted windshield time back. Like, how much could I have learned instead of listening to country radio or blue collar comedy on satellite radio? Just all that wasted time. So the time thing is a common challenge, but I think it's overcomable. Even if you can just carve out 15 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, like make that a date with yourself and put it on the calendar and kind of commit to moving forward. It's like that one push-up. It's like, okay, I'm gonna start, and it may not seem like I'm gonna make a lot of progress, but the compound effect of doing that day after day definitely adds up over time. That's something I actually learned from my brother. He's like, look, I have a goal. Like, he's working crazy hours, but he has on his like little tracker sheet 5 minutes. I have to work on my website, 5 minutes. I have to work on my business, 5 minutes. And of course, once you're doing that 5 minutes, you probably, can extend that to 15 or half an hour, whatever it may be. But like, that was his kind of micro goal for doing it. On the money front, I mean, plain and simple, like, don't spend a lot of money until you have validated the idea. There's lots of different business models you could start for next to nothing. Like the podcast is a great example of, $100 startup. The mic at the time that I bought it was probably $50, and then you had to get some media hosting, and it was like a very inexpensive experiment to begin. And just about all of my experiments and all of the businesses have started that way. Something doesn't have to be expensive to get off the ground. And if something does look expensive, for example, the shoe site initially cost $10,000 to develop, but I didn't plunk down that investment until I kind of validated with these little text ads, to see if anybody would buy.
Exactly. You want to get proof of concept before you put a lot of money into it. And that's where I find a lot of people actually end up getting very discouraged and in a lot of trouble, quite frankly, because they just think they have this great idea. And it is a great idea, but is it a great idea to the marketplace? Are people going to buy it?
Right.
And that makes a big difference. One book that I'll recommend that will help you with that is a book by Pat Flynn, Will It Fly? It's specifically designed to help you decide if what your great idea is, just because it's a great idea doesn't necessarily mean it's a great business. So that book will certainly help you make that decision.
Yeah, step by step, how to validate it.
Absolutely. So one last question for you, and that is, what does living a life of abundance mean to you, Nick?
I think it goes back to, having that freedom over your own schedule and then doing work that helps other people. And I guess that's kind of a weak definition, because that's like any business ever, it must help other people or else it doesn't really exist. But that's kind of what I aim to do, and just feel very grateful to be able to do this work every day.
No, that's a great answer. I absolutely love it. So we're going to close this up. I really appreciate your time. I'm glad we were finally able to get on the line and have this conversation. But before we let you go, leave us with a parting piece of guidance and any way that we can get in contact with you and get more of you.
You bet. So a parting piece of guidance that I like to give is to think like a scientist. And by that I mean become a side hustle scientist. Because, think like an experimenter, adopt the experimenter's mindset, where the scientist in the lab never really fails. A test tube might blow up in your face, but there's either kind of proves or disproves your hypothesis. Probably disproves if it is blowing up, but that kind of lessens the sting of the inevitable failures that come. Like, starting a business is hard, but if you kind of frame it at least in your mind as, hey, look, I'm going to give this a shot. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever kind of you're comfortable with, to kind of give yourself time to find a customer, see if you like doing this, see if that's something that excites you. And if it doesn't work, you can chalk it up as an experiment and kind of reevaluate and move on to the next one. Best place to find me, the home base is at sidehustlenation.com. If you hit sidehustlenation.com/ideas, you'll have a constantly updated laundry list of part-time business ideas that you can start today. And would love to see you over there.
Perfect. I appreciate you sharing that. One thing I do want to mention, and I get caught up in this as well, abundant leaders, when you go to Nick's site, sidehustlenation.com, be very careful because there are so many good ideas that you're going to want to do this one, and then you're going to say, I can do that one, I want to do that one. Find something that you feel will truly resonate with you. Pretty much everything there is already proof of concept. It's working for somebody. So don't worry about that part. Just find something that you know will resonate with you, something you can do, and stick with that one. That way you don't get too sidetracked and you're not diluting yourself too much. I see some people, they try to do 3, 4, 5 different side hustles, and if you were to just focus on one, you could truly get to where you want to go financially, personally, abundantly, and get that freedom that you're looking for. Any thoughts on that, Nick, before we close up?
One thing at a time. Definitely focus something that I struggle with, but
Me too.
Easier said than done, but I'll agree with you on that one.
It is. And focus is follow one course until success. And I've already given John Lee Dumas credit for that one, so I'm going to use that as mine now.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, man. It was fun. I look forward to many more conversations, and I look forward to your other episodes, and I look forward to some feedback from this show when it posts, and I'll let you know when it does.
You bet, man. We'll see you soon.
All right, brother. Take care. All right, guys, that's all we have for you today. You know I tell you all the time, and I'm going to keep saying it because it really is extremely important. I want you guys to have some sort of a side gig, a side hustle, some extra stream of income that you can do part-time for now. And if something ever does happen in your life to where you become disabled or you lose your job or one of your family members has an issue and you need to quit working so that you can care for a family member, I want you to have something to fall back on that you can build up and be proud of instead of walking down or going down to the welfare office and drawing unemployment or welfare of any sort. I've been there. It's not a fun place to be. I grew up in that environment. And it's okay if you end up there for a short period of time. But if you have some sort of a side hustle, you don't have to worry about going there. It's just not an abundant environment for you or your mind to be in. And I want you to be able to provide for your family, your community, and ultimately give back to the world. You can do that much easier if you have some sort of a side hustle, something that you're proud of that you can continue on with, or even something that you can just supplement your current income from. Maybe bring your wife home or have the extra cash to take that vacation that you've always wanted to take. Any number of things that a side hustle can provide for you. Now, go out and live your life of abundance, and man, make sure to pay it forward.
That's all for today, Abundance Leaders. For more about our guests and the powerful information we shared with you today, be sure to sign up for our mailing list at menofabundance.com. We appreciate your time and look forward to hanging out with you on our next episode. So until then, be sure to pay it forward and live your life of abundance.